Welcome back, everybody. Sharon Toerek with you again on the Innovative Agency, and happy to be with you. Um, I like it when we shake things up a little bit around here on the show, and we're going to do that today because we have not had an expert on the show in a very, very, very long time that plays in the space that today's expert plays in. And so, Zino, I'm really excited to have a conversation with you and learn a little bit more about your world and also share some observations that you've gleaned from building your agency and working in the space you do with some of our listeners today. So, Zino Rost van Tonningen, how'd I do?
Yeah, that was great. Did great.
Zeno and I
Yeah,
made a deal before we hit record that I was gonna go for his whole name and see if I could pronounce it well, and I think I did not too badly. So apologies if I butchered it a little
I've
bit.
heard worse. I've heard worse. So you did very good.
I
So
appreciate it. So Zeno is the CEO and founder of TyrAds, and TyrAds is a very interesting and blend of e-commerce, mobile app development. Um, Gaming-based marketing. That's my verbiage, not Zeno's. But really just all things sort of next gen and mobile first. And this is a space that we don't spend a lot of time thinking about in my firm because it's it's a rarer sort of air in terms of agencies, and it kind of blends to my mind, and you'll correct me if I'm seeing this a little bit skewed, but your blend of technology and marketing and advertising smarts on all kind of in one. So as much as you're an agency, you are really a tech first business, right? Do I have that right?
yeah, we evolved more into technology as we went, but our roots were on the agency side, right? So I've
Yeah.
been in the agency world for more than 10 years, I would say. Mainly on mobile app marketing, right? And that moved into building our own first agency management system. And then from there, building out our own platform to actually serve the ads, right? So it went a little bit step by step, a little bit by little bit. We started adding more things into it, into the mix,
Mhm.
to make the full cycle from A to Z all ready to go for majority of our clients now.
What got you passionate about focusing on mobile first strategies and applying those to advertising?
Yeah, so actually, I started off in mobile advertising as one of the first agencies in Netherlands. That was about, I think, 10, 11 years ago now.
Hmm.
And I got very passionate about it, just about the amount of information that is available there, right? So it really, there's so many different things that you can optimize and so many different things that you can learn about marketing and about mobile itself, right? It's still to this day, I'm still learning more about how it works day in, day out, right?
Yeah.
And that really interests me. There's always something to learn new, right? So you're never bored about the new thing of marketing or the new thing that's happening. The market doesn't stay stagnant, right? It changes all the time.
Hmm.
So it's always something that is changing. It's always something that you have to learn about. So you're never really bored. And I bore very quickly. So that really helps me out to stay up to speed with everything. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what really makes me most interested about the industry as a whole.
Um, all right. So let's talk a little bit about one of the disciplines that your agency really specializes in as applied to the mobile space, but this is really something that could translate, I'm guessing, into other areas of marketing and advertising is reward-based marketing. And um, I learned a little bit about this studying prior to our conversation today, and you gave me a few tips and pointers when we were talking briefly before we hit record. Um, but first of all, let's sort of set the table. What do you mean when we say reward marketing? Because I had kind of a different idea about it until you corrected me a little bit ago. So let's start there. What is reward marketing exactly?
Yeah, I think the traditional reward marketing, as most know it, is like coupons and cashbacks and things that are related towards shopping primarily. But about actually quite early on in the mobile space, there's something that was called incentivized traffic, and that was where you can incentivize users to download particular apps or games. And that was
Right.
primarily used actually to launch games into the top stores in or apps into the top stores of the app stores, right? So when our first agency actually launched, right, we were specialized in getting you to the top of the app store, right, by buying a huge amount of downloads in a very short amount of time. And those were incentivized basically to get you there, right? It was a specific service that would help you get a huge increase in organic downloads. Um, and that eventually evolved. Actually, it became banned by the app stores, right? So it wasn't allowed anymore to do that. And for a
Hmm.
longest period of time, it wasn't really on a high focus for a lot of advertisers and a lot of brands really to promote their apps or their products on mobile apps. But that started changing about 4 years ago, and that's really where the industry started shifting, where it became more prevalent and more acceptable to do this again, but in different ways and in different ways of rewarding users. So it
Hmm.
wasn't a reward anymore like a coupon or a cashback or for downloading an app. It was really to achieve something or do something within the apps that you're promoting or within the websites that you're promoting. So what do I mean with that? For example, if you're looking at a game, for example, it's like if you hit level 10 or you hit level 50, you'll get a little reward just to get to that point, right?
Right.
But we also started seeing a lot of incentivized and rewards coming for things like Uber Eats, for example, right? So Uber Eats is in the city. They want to give specific rewards to users to try out their service or retry their service and re-engage with their service.
Right.
And that has been evolving now, and that's really starting to mature, where you're seeing a lot of brand and brand apps like Hulu, or you're seeing Uber Eats, rewarding users to try out their service instead of trying to market for those users. And that's really where the industry has been building to. It's like, okay, hey, try my service and get a little reward at the same time, right? Instead of spending $50 to acquire the user by getting the ads, maybe they can lower that cost by $20, right? And just get the same result.
Right. Right. This is going to be a really unfair question because I'm sure it's circumstances dependent, but do you find that the in-app reward systems work more effectively to get new customers into the mix or to increase engagement by the customers that the owner of the business, the app, whomever has? Or does it depend?
So the magic really happens when you do it on the engagement side. And that's really where, if you can, together with the data that you have, right, and together with the pixels that you add onto your websites or the tracking that you do onto your apps, is to really re-engage those users to engage with them over their entire journey that you with them, right? So let's say they don't engage with your website or with your app, giving them a discount or a coupon or giving them some kind of reward to actually try out the service again or try to subscribe again can give them that little extra nudge to just try it again
Mhm.
and make that hurdle a little bit less of a problem, right? So it's
Right.
great as a first interaction, but it can also be used as a continuously engagement tool to engage them for a longer period of time. So you don't necessarily just need to do it just to get the user the first time, but also to keep them engaged over a longer period of time as well.
And how do you help your clients stand out when they implement these programs? Because I know when I'm in an app, trying to accomplish something and these things pop up, I sometimes I'm receptive, it depends on my circumstances, but sometimes it's just slowing me down from doing what it is that I need to do. So, how do you help your clients break through that noise so that they're getting the engagement that they need and the attention that they need with the consumer who's experiencing, the reward or the incentive?
Yeah, everything's about the data on that one, right? So
Yeah,
everything is testing, 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 right? So of course we ran campaigns that tested out and were horrible results, right? I'm not going
great.
to sit here that everything is just rosy and dandy all the time. But the other cases that you actually have is that sometimes if you do test, you get a specific way of communicating, a specific journey. I like to call it like a rewards journey, right? A journey that allow you to reward the user without affecting their overall journey into the app. And that is something that you need to test out with and experiment with, right? So every app functions different. Every app has different moments that actually allow the user to be engaged at that moment that they might churn. And that needs to be tested thoroughly, right? So that is really us being able to have the capabilities of actually testing that out and validating that, or
Hmm.
giving our clients the right feedback or our advertisers the right feedback of like, okay, how do you actually do that, right? How do you
Hmm.
actually measure that performance, and how do you actually measure if a rewards journey is actually resulting into churn, or if it's actually resulting into better bottom line for you as an advertiser, right?
Yeah. Well, and because because it's mobile technology and because you have access to such rich data, I imagine you can make pivots pretty quickly if something's not working well or as expected.
Yeah, yeah, everything is feature flags, experimentation, right? So there's a lot of tools out there that you can do with A/B testing and feature flags, right? And feature testing,
Hmm.
and testing something out like a journey is like a testing out like a feature of a product, right? Or like testing out a creative on a marketing campaign, right?
Hmm.
Before you go full blast on that campaign or you try something else, you want to test out how it works on a specific range of users, for example, right? You don't want to test it out on 100% of the users, maybe on 10 or 20% of the users, and you want to see what the actual down the line effect of it is, right? Are the users churning? Are the users engaging with it? Are the users dropping off at a certain point? Or are the users just seeing your reward and just dropping off completely, right? That's really a lot of different things that can have an effect on that side. So you need to really measure everything on that side.
So, do you see the role of your agency as more as a marketing partner, or do you see your business more as a technology business? I'm curious, as an entrepreneur, when you're sort of ex telling your story and explaining the value that you bring to a brand, um, how do you characterize how you lead and what you do when you're talking to new clients or potential clients?
So some clients are very advanced, right? And they really know what they want, and then we just help them get more traffic, right?
Yeah.
So others are a lot more early stage, and they really don't know what will actually get them good results. And
Hmm.
that is really where it's a lot more consultative work that we need to really educate them. It's like, okay, hey, you can give them a reward, or you can give a reward to a specific point, but you need to understand that you need to also engage them to keep playing or keep doing something within the app, right? It's just not a single reward that you have to do. So it's always a combination effort that we have with our clients or with our customers or with anybody that wants to go into the rewarded space, is to really understand, okay, hey, how can I really be effective at maximizing the return on my advertising there? So that is something that yeah, takes time and is always in partnership with the partners, right? So we see ourselves more as a marketing company that has tech aspects towards it, right?
Hmm.
And we do have our own traffic with that, right? But it's really that first part is really most important, right? Because
Right.
without the proper setup, without the right things and the right things to set it up, right, that it will never work, right? Even if I have the best shiny technology that is there. So yeah.
Yeah, well, the best shiny technology and also the access to piles of data, which I imagine could get overwhelming for a brand because they have the data, but they don't always have the help they need to understand how to use it or what to do with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of brands, they have what's called data lake houses, right? Or lake houses for data, right?
Right.
Where they just store a bunch of data that one day they will use.
Right.
And if they will ever use it, that's the question, right? So, but at the
Yeah.
same time, they're still paying for it to store it. So we see a lot that a lot of brands, they have a lot amount of data, but really making the connection between what is valuable data and what's not valuable data,
Hmm.
that's the biggest challenge, really. It's the connecting the dots between the data points and really connecting it so that you can actually utilize it in an effective manner.
Right.
That's really the most challenging thing.
So talk about how when you engage with a client, um, Do you obviously you got to start from the perspective of their business goal, right? Because that's why they're engaging you to achieve something, whether it's reach or eyeballs or whatever it might be, revenue. Uh, but beyond that, so what does your conversation or process look like with a typical client? You're looking at their goals first, and then are you digging into their data really early, or um, are you creatively brainstorming with them next, or what? Because it's such a data-rich practice, and
Mhm.
the creativity that you've got to apply to it, does that sort of come up front? Does that come, are you doing these things simultaneously? How does the process work?
Yeah, so the process that we have with any client really depends on what type of client they are. We have two main type of clients that we work with, and one are gaming companies, right? They have their games, and it, like I said, they you achieve to certain levels. But we also have clients that are brands, right? And brands can be in two different locations. Usually, brand games are almost always apps related, right? But brands can be both on web and on apps itself. So the strategy of a brand usually depends on what their goals are and what they want to achieve, right? So sometimes they want to achieve to get more subscriptions, right? But they don't want to pay for the subscriptions in the store, the store fees, for example, the 30% that you have to pay for that.
Mm,
So then it becomes, okay, how can we make a strategy to help them get more subscriptions, but not on their apps, but on their websites? And then the strategy becomes, okay, hey, how can we make sure that we can get them more users to their websites or
mhm,
to their apps, depending on their goals, and get them the goals and still be able to engage those users over a longer period of time. Because if it's on a website, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for us to re-engage those users, right? Whereas
mhm,
if it's on an app, it's going to be a lot easier because we have that direct data of like, hey, this is the app, this is the one that we need to target, etc. And this is how we can retarget those users potentially. Um, so the challenge with brands really lies in of like where are we sending the users to? And once we send the users to a specific location, okay, how can we effectively get that re-engagement strategy working uh, as well? And that works completely different for websites as it does on apps. And
mhm.
that's where the biggest discussion comes in first, right? So um, yeah.
We have been on quite a journey over the last few years. I mean, it has felt so in the United States, especially, but everywhere with data, right? First party data, cookies being here, then cookies allegedly going away, and then cookies not so much going away, and data privacy regulation, both, in Europe and in the United States, on a state by state basis. So, working so heavily in data every day, it's not an easy thing to do. And so let's start there. How do you manage? I don't know the size of your team, but how do you manage all these massive troves of data that you are working with every day for all of these different clients, first of all? Let's start there.
Yeah, so working with data is very interesting. So first off, just the basics, be able to collect data and store it, right? It's really understanding the legal frameworks of like how you can actually store it or request it and what data are you allowed to store, right?
Mhm.
Understanding that principle, and we work in multiple different markets. Every market has its own rules now. It's starting to become very widespread with different rules in every market, and understanding what we're allowed to collect and what we're not allowed to collect, and then for what we need permissions. That was the very first biggest challenge that we need to overcome, and that's where
Mhm.
we have our legal department that takes care of it and that can handle that stuff. And also our clients also they have those requirements as well, even working with them, right? So I have to sometimes fill in questionnaires that take me like 2 weeks just to fill in with all the questions that they're asking for about
I
everything
know.
related to
Well, yes,
privacy.
I
Yeah.
mean, I understand that. And in the United States, we don't have a federal standard, so you're dealing with 50 different sets of rules potentially, depending on what kind of work you're doing. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, which I think the most challenging one is the Californian one, right? So the one that's
Yes.
actually related towards that's trying to follow more of the European standard there.
Right.
So yeah, that's the very first challenge. And the second challenge is the storing of data and being able to do that effectively on a large scale. And that is where building out the right data team, where you have your own data warehouse to be able to
Mhm.
collect that data. I highlight a little bit like what's called like a data lake or a data lake warehouse, right? Or a lake house, as they call it.
Mhm.
And that is where you can store massive amount of data, right? In a way that you can then later use for all kinds of different purposes, right? So being able to store this kind of data and being able to use this data and yeah, clean this data so that you can actually effectively use that. That is a huge task, especially in the mobile side. That's where we have a huge amount of data.
Mhm.
Um, and then being able to use that effectively, right? Those are really the biggest uh, problems that you're going to deal with, right? If you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Um, but once you do, right, that's when you have your own first party data. And once you have your own first party data, that is when you can utilize that in much more creative ways than you would be able to do that with second or third party data.
Mhm.
Because you own the data, right? It's your own data. You have the right permissions for it, and you have the right ways of sharing that without affecting any of the user privacy, or sharing or enriching that or buying that from third parties, right?
Mhm.
So first party data is one of the most powerful things and one of the most important things for any agency or any company to really focus on because that really gives you control. And that control will give you a lot of ways to go different ways, right? If you want to go as target specific audiences or you want to do specific marketing campaigns, first party data is the way to be able to do that now. And there's different ways to use that.
Mhm. So, do you spend as much time up front with the client managing through this whole issue of how to get the right data in the right place before you can talk about strategy or creativity? It sounds to me like, the reason I'm asking is because I think agencies sometimes underestimate the amount of due diligence it takes in the beginning of a relationship with a client to truly make sure that um, the data that you're using is clean and that the agency is can be comfortable that it was properly obtained and all those good things. I'm always looking at it from a risk management point of view because that's what we do. That's what we help agencies
Yeah.
with. But does that take do you spend a lot of time up front with your clients on that before you can even get to sort of the creative process of how to design a campaign?
Yeah, well, the setup is the biggest amount of work really to get that all set
Yeah.
up correctly. Once it's set up, it's a lot easier, right? But yeah, the setup took a lot of time.
Well, the
It's
setup and the conversation, right? The
yeah,
conversation around responsibility and liability, honestly, between
yeah.
agency and client, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest, specifically with some of the larger clients that are there, right? The liability question comes in, and that is also where you get the responsibility of like how to handle the data, not only in terms of yeah, how you're processing it and what data you're collecting, but also how securely are you storing it, right? And if there is something that gets leaked or something that gets hacked, right, that you are also responsible for that to a degree, right?
Right.
So that is really where the biggest problems come in when you're dealing with larger amounts of data is really you need to have the right data policies right within the company and how you secure that, but also how
Mhm.
do you prevent any kind of access that is not allowed,
Right.
right? And that's really where the challenge lies in, right? Specifically, it's a great value to add this to any agency, right? If you have your own first party data and you have your
Mhm.
own data that you could utilize, but it is quite an investment to get to that point.
Right.
And once you are there, right, you have something that's very unique, a unique selling point that you can also always utilize, right?
Right.
But the first party data is only going to become more and more prevalent and more important as we grow in the AI world as well, right? That first party data is the entire value of what AI can be enabled on or not.
Well, and we can't have a conversation on the show without saying A and I together. So let's talk about that for a minute. Um,
Yeah.
um, what opportunities, if you had a crystal ball over the next, let's say, 18 months or so, what opportunities are you seeing for brands or for your video game clients to leverage the data that you all are collecting and using and manipulating for them that maybe didn't exist a couple years ago. So what are you excited about moving ahead in terms of what data is going to be able to help you do for your clients?
Um, yeah, so I touched base a little bit on the data cleaning part, right? And how that is an important step within if you save data, right? Back in the day, doing data cleaning was with data engineers and cleaning this step by step, rigorously checking everything, analyzing everything, and it takes a huge amount of time. But actually, where the biggest opportunity lies for a lot of agencies is that how simple it actually has become now. And the storing of the data and the process of enriching the data is something that you can do very easily now with agents, right? And something that we recently launched, right, with Google Gemini 3 and their new IDE. There's like an agent builder, right?
Mhm.
It's very easy actually to enrich huge amounts of data without actually needing to collect it in the first place. So you can use LLMs, right, large language models, and these models to actually enrich huge amounts of data to give you more context of how you can actually use this to target specific marketing campaigns and how you can actually do this to use this to make more content or ad creatives that actually engage with your audiences more based on the data that you've actually enriched. So there's a huge opportunity right now that I see that and how easy it's going to be to enrich data and how easy it's going to be to structure that in a way that you don't need a team of data engineers or a whole data team to be able to make that happen.
Mhm.
So smaller agencies, right? Even though it's a big task, right? If you tackle this early on, you can be one of the front runners to actually be able to collect that data, store that data, and use that data in a way that actually can help you make more effective marketing campaigns.
I love it. I love any suggestion that is relatable to an agency of any size or scale because we're looking at the risks around AI, but we have to look at them through the lens of what the opportunities are. And I agree with you that one of the big opportunities is it levels the playing field and it enables um, independent agencies to really to shoot higher, right? And to
Yeah.
do more more efficiently. So I thank you for pointing that out. I think that's really important to mention. Um, what about what are you excited about with reward-based marketing? What do you see coming down? What have you been trying, and what would you like to see more brands try with reward-based marketing, either in the video game space or in the mobile app space, like in general?
So I think what is the most exciting thing in the rewarded space is the possibility of hyper personalization, right? And that is really rewards that are really tailored to the individual user.
Okay.
And that is something that is starting to build in the ecosystem more and more. And that is really like, okay, hey, it's rewards not just in general. It's like, okay, hey, like, for example, like a coupon, right? Like you have one coupon that is for everybody, right?
Hmm.
But a coupon that's personalized for the individual user based on their individual data points that you can get, right? That is where a lot of opportunities lie in, right? And a percentage of a coupon, for example, can have a big impact on that if someone will actually action on it, right?
Hmm.
Some users always do coupons because they love coupons, but other users will only do it if it's actually worth the effort, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of hyper personalization and being able to do that. That's really where I see the rewarded space going to. And that's really where I see a lot of marketing going to, not only rewarded,
Mhm.
is being able to use that personalization on a much more granular level without even using personal data of the user, right? Just as what the contextual data around it that can allow you to do that. So that is where I'm most excited about, right? That's what I can geek out about a little bit.
Yeah, no,
And that's what I think really cool.
I don't think it's geeky. I mean, I would love the idea of a reward that is tailored to my priorities. as a consumer, I'm taking my lawyer hat off and my agency advisor hat off for a minute. As a consumer, I sometimes, wrestle with how much information am I willing to give up in order
Mm.
to get that experience served to me. And so, how do you help your clients break through sort of that resistance? Because we're all fatigued as consumers, right? I mean,
Mm.
every brand we engage with wants to know more about us all the time, and it's understandable why they do. But how do do you see that sort of consumer skepticism or consumer resistance slow you down ever in a campaign, or is it that the speed of the data helps you sort of pivot really quickly, and so you can adjust as you need to based on what the data is telling you?
Yeah, so for us, it's always a trade-off with the user, right? So we always give
Yeah.
them something in return for something that they give us, right? So there's a direct understanding of if I give this, I get this back,
Hmm.
right? And that makes it a lot easier to ask for something if you actually give something in return right away. So if I want to get some more information about a user or their interests or their preferences, right? It's a rewarded survey that we can provide towards that user just to get that a little bit more data around that user. And that's also what we see a lot of brands do is they actually utilize rewarded surveys to actually get more information about their users just so that they can get a better understanding of like what their preferences might be, what they would like, and what they actually think is more of an interest that they could potentially use for targeting or for marketing campaigns.
Hmm.
So when you reward someone, that's something that usually removes that block a little bit, right? Just asking for something, not giving something in return. Of course, you're always going to get some resistance on that. But if you give someone a reward for something and for doing something, right,
Hmm.
usually that resistance goes away a lot easier.
What's an example that you've either seen competitors do or maybe in retrospect you might have done different of a reward campaign that that doesn't work or that didn't work in the market? Maybe pick a competitor's
Um,
one. Say not to call your own clients out.
um, yeah, so the usually it's that the reward structure or the incentive is not aligned with what their business goals are,
Hmm.
right? And that's usually where things go horribly wrong. And that is with every, even us or our reward, our competitors, right? It's that if you have, for example, you have a finance app that rewards people to do deposits, right?
Hmm.
That will lead to a lot of people just doing the deposit and leaving again, right? So that's where you get rewarded fraud, right? So rewarded fraud is, especially if you get rewards, there's going to be fraud that's going to be related towards that.
Hmm.
So the biggest problems that we see is usually that the reward doesn't align with the business goals of what someone is trying to achieve, right? If you're trying to get someone to buy a product and use it, right, then your
Right.
reward should be copying that what you're trying to get them to do. It's not
Yeah.
by leaving an email that doesn't actually give you any value. It's about what do you want them actually to do in that journey to actually get them to engage with something.
Hmm.
And that will actually bring value for you as a business, not just give you good looking metrics.
Right.
And that's really where most of the problems come in, and that's really where most of the problems start. And usually we don't even start those kind of campaigns because we know that in 2 months or 3 months' time, a client will come towards us and say, "Hey, I'm not actually earning any money from this," right? And we would just reject it before we even started. And that is something that yeah, that's very important. And you still see some companies, and primarily on larger companies, that they just want to show good metrics for their quarterly numbers, right? That then they don't really care about what actually happens afterwards because they can show those numbers. So
Right.
there's a lot of playing around that happens there, but it's usually not the smaller brands. It's usually the bigger brands that don't really care about that end business goal that is there. But that does happen a lot.
Well, that's a good example to bring up because that's exactly the kind of thing that leads to churn in the relationship between the brand and the agency, right? So
Yeah.
if you're engaged to take that kind of, in my view, if you're engaged to take that kind of an approach to solving a problem for a client and it's a very short term way to address things, then you're not going to be working for that brand probably next year or maybe even next quarter, right? And it's very expensive then for the agency to have to replace that business with another client or customer, and all the time it takes to get up to speed with them and things like that. So churn is never good for an agency client relationship, and anything you can do, in my view, to reduce it or prevent it is profitable for an agency.
100%. I think if you have the right focus and you focus on providing value, right? I think the saying that most people underestimate what they can do in 10 years, but overestimate what they do in 1 year, or it's the other way around, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that's where the agency world is like the biggest example of exactly that's what will happen, right? You'll probably overestimate what you can do in revenue in 1 year and underestimate what you can do in the other, exact opposite, sorry.
Yeah.
But basically the idea behind that is that, if you don't provide value long term for any client, and I learned this very early on in my agency years, is that, you're going to have a quarter that's going to be great,
Yeah.
but your year is not going to look so good.
That's so, I
So,
mean, that
yeah,
is so true. And this is an industry where moving fast is, part of the culture, and quick hits are part of the culture. And so slowing down is not a favorite thing for a lot of people in the agency world or in marketing in general. But you're right. Short-term thinking is expensive for
yeah,
agencies, right? Yeah.
yeah.
I have learned so much in such a short period of time about something I maybe thought I understood, but didn't understand as well as I do now. And so I'm really appreciative to you, Zeno, for sort of sharing your story and talking a little bit about what you're working on, um, and at TyrAds. And speaking of which, how can people learn more about what TyrAds does and get connected with you if they'd like to learn more?
Cool. Yeah. So you can go to our website at www.tyrads.com.
Hmm.
And there you can actually see everything that we do in terms of getting users and also monetizing different brands with our solutions. But you can also always reach out to me on LinkedIn. So my name is Zino Rost van Tonningen, right? And then you can just find me, or Zino Rovato. You'll find both of those on LinkedIn. And then you can just reach out to me directly, and then you can contact me. And I'm always open for a discussion. So um, no worries with that.
Amazing. Zino Rost van Tonningen. That's probably the most melodic guest name I'll ever get a chance to pronounce on this show. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I really enjoyed the conversation and learned a lot, and I'm sure listeners have as well. So it was a joy to talk with you. Thank you so much. And thanks
Thank
to
you,
the rest
Sharon.
of you for joining us today.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. And until then, everybody stay well. Take care.